To start with that,
Okay, what's that?
tell me about the bicycle accident and what happened afterwards. The motorcycle accident.
Motorcycle accident? Well, I had just arrived at holding camp, number 1 CSRU, which stands for Canadian Signals Reinforcement Unit, just outside of Cove in England, and bumped into a chap that I had taught in Canada in the officers' training, Rolly Hamlin. And Rolly was a motor transport officer at number 1 CSRU. And it was a pleasant Sunday afternoon. Rolly and I were chatting, and Rolly said, let's get a couple of motorcycles and go for a training ride. Which we did. We went into a great estate where the grounds were ideal for cross-country motorcycling, and we came to we were riding through a pine forest. The ground was literally carpeted with long, slippery pine needles, and we came to a dip, quite a sharp valley, and Rolly says, wait here, I'll go over first. So he raced his motorcycle down one side and up the other side, and slewed it around and turned and looked back at me and says, okay, come on, Gay. Well, I started very gently because motorcycles were never my thing, and wheels of my motorcycle bounced over the roots of a tree stump that protruded above the carpet of pine needles, and as the rear wheel crossed that bump on that slippery carpet of pine needles, it started to slew sideways downhill. I thought I could kick the motorcycle back up, but such was not to be. My leg got pinned, the motorcycle came right over on me, my leg got pinned on the root of this stump, and the footrest post penetrated the calf of my leg, and it continued with the momentum of the machine down for about 10 inches, tearing my leg open. And Rolly saw immediately that I was in trouble, so he highballed back to have a look at me. He says, oh my God, Gay, I'm going for help. So he went for help. I turned myself around so that my head was down in the valley, downwards in the valley, and my feet were up, because I had a mental picture of myself hemorrhaging. It just so happened that the wound bled very little. There were no blood vessels, but I could look into the wound and see the bone of my leg. So I guess I went into a slightly minor shock and let out a yell for help. And within seconds, it seems, a nice British soldier was kneeling beside me, and I told him, I reported, well, they've gone for an ambulance, so I'm all right there, but I need company and I need a cigarette. And the soldier gave me a cigarette. It was an English cigarette, but it still tasted darn good. And really, before I had finished that cigarette, there was an ambulance there that took me into hospital, where I underwent a series of 3 operations. And I was at number 4 Canadian hospital. And well, I guess my 3rd or 4th day there, and I had already had 2 of the operations. They evacuated that hospital because D-Day was scheduled, and they expected enormous casualties back from the beaches from D-Day. So I was evacuated to number 11 Canadian Hospital, which was at Cliveden, I don't know why the St. Ives comes to mind. That's not at St. Ives at all. St. Ives is way down on the bottom of England. Anyway, it's a beauty spot on the Thames River. The Cliveden estate itself was, just before the war, the headquarters for a politico-social sect headed, of course, by Lady Astor, and included the Prince of Wales and a pretty high-powered, high society set, and they were extremely influential in British politics and in the relationships with Germany. It's because of that location, where we were in the lower grounds of the Cliveden estate, that Lady Astor used to be almost a daily visitor to the hospital. And by the way, one of her guests on one occasion was the now Queen Mother, Elizabeth, who was then Queen of England. And she made her way round the rounds, including our ward. And I was in a ward with 21 or 22 other officers. And when I went in that ward, I felt I was perhaps the world's unluckiest man. I was suffering, I was hurt, and there was a big question whether I'd ever walk again. And so I felt very sorry for myself until I looked around the room and saw that, in truth, I was the least hurt, least injured of any of those officers in that ward. One was a quadriplegic. He had both arms and both legs blown off in a mine explosion in Italy. Another was a naval captain who had been picked out of burning sea because an oil slick formed and caught fire, and he had third-degree burns over the great part of his body, and he was lying in a bath of seawater because they learned during the war that the best treatment for burns was a bath of seawater or brine. Seawater better because it had some chemicals, minerals that seemed to help the healing process. I guess that's just one more signal of the fact that man originated as a marine animal somewhere in its evolution. Anyway, Lady Astor was just a marvel, and she'd always entertain us with stories of what had happened in Parliament that day, because she was a member of Parliament. And she was a beautiful woman even then, and they used to tell some marvelous stories about her as a young lady. As an old lady, she had a charming wit. She sounded a little like George Bernard Shaw, not timbre of voice, but in the quality of her English and in the sharpness of her wit. And one day she was chatting with me and told me about I had drawn her out on this. I had known of her sponsorship of Lawrence of Arabia, and known that she had had him work on motor torpedo boats, on marine engines. Indeed, he even worked for a while on the engines that went into the Spitfire and Hurricane, which were the saviors of Britain. He was a marvelous inventor, a genius in every respect. He had been hidden from international view for some years because he joined the British Air Force as a very embittered man, as a leading aircraftsman, a street mechanic. And it was during that time that he did some of his best writing. And one book that he wrote was called The Mint.